Welcome back. This video is part of a series on the storage bench, and this video is intended to give you detailed instructions on building and installing the drawers. The oval cutout is not only kind of an artsy addition, it also functions as the handle. The sides have nice black drawer slides as well as maple dowel joinery. I started by making the drawer fronts, and I just made them a little bit oversized at this point. And so I milled down some walnut for them, and then I wanted to make a template, and so I was just kind of playing around with what I wanted the shape in the middle of the drawer to be. And with a compass, I just kind of kept messing around until I got an oval that I ended up liking. I cut the template out at the bandsaw, ensuring that I used the same exit point as my entry point, and then I filled that point with a little bit of wood filler and just put a little bit of painter's tape over it. Part of why I made a template was because I thought that I might have to use this to flush trim up the inside, but I didn't end up needing to do that, so I just traced the oval out, and right now the walnut drawer pieces are in two separate pieces. And then by flipping it exactly over for the other drawer, I was able to assure that they were symmetrical. Back at the bandsaw, I cut off each of the partial overs individually and then spent some time sanding them out and then just glued both pieces together. I use dark wood glue whenever I'm gluing walnut to walnut. In order to make the drawer front actually function as a handle, I'm going to add a 45-degree routed angle out on the back side of the drawer front. And so I took several short passes and gradually worked my way up. And it's still, anytime you're routering on the inside of a curve or anytime you're routering near the end grain, there is the possibility that you can actually catch this and get some kickback. So here's some footage, and I actually even kind of jumped just watching it back here. So this is what it looks like when it kind of grabs and you get kickback. Fortunately, the tear out was actually pretty minimal, and it was on the inside, so I was able to sand it out enough that you can't ever see it. But this sometimes happens when you're using a template for routering and stuff as well, and I've had whole chunks just go flying off. As you can see, the one that didn't have a tragedy turned out really nice. And then, of course, it was time for more sanding again. Next, I milled down and then resawed the walnut for the sides of the drawer, and the reason why I went with such thin wood on the sides of the drawer was because I needed the inside dimension of the drawer to be wide enough to hold a basketball, but I didn't want to lose overall width from the middle shelf by wasting a couple of extra inches by having thick sides of the drawer. Since the edges were going to be thin, I wanted a little bit stronger base, so I went with 1/2-inch MDF for the bottom of the drawers, and then I stained it with an espresso stain. Next, I prepped the front and the back of the drawer boxes, and I went with this highly figured aspen that I had, and so I trimmed it all to size and then sanded it. I did pre-finish the aspen so that I'd be able to really see the grain pop, so that I could assure that I chose the best two sides to be the part that would be looking through the oval. When I was assembling the box, I had 1/4-inch spacers underneath the bottom, and that would assure that when I went to put the hardware on for the drawer slides, that I was actually screwing all the way into the bottom and not just into that thin walnut. I attached a few brad nails to help hold this in place, and they will be covered by the drawer front. So at this point, I'm going to glue the sides of the drawers on, and I'm just going to make sure that I don't put too much so I don't get a lot of squeeze out. I'm also going to be adding the dowels to help make this more secure yet. When marking out the spots for the dowels, I chose to go 1 inch from the top of the walnut, 1 inch from the bottom of the walnut, and then right in the center. At the drill press, I'm using a 1/4-inch drill bit, and I assure that I drilled down approximately 2 inches in each hole. The dowels were a really tight fit, so I used a wooden mallet to hammer them in, and then I just flush trimmed it off with a handsaw. To sand the dowels down, 120 grit works really nice and does a quick job of it. Before I assembled the second box, I wanted to deal with some of the knots and kind of holes that was in the walnut. So I'm getting a little bit of sawdust from my bandsaw, and bandsaw sawdust is a really good consistency to help make little filler. So I had resawn straight up walnut on there, so it's the perfect shavings for this. And then I'm just going to take some wood glue and I'm going to just work it around in my fingers. That's really the way that I've found best to be able to tell when I have just the right putty kind of consistency. And then I'm just going to mash this into every one of the little holes, and this is going to make a really nice wood filler. So as you can see, there were a lot of spots that needed filling. So after that dried for a few minutes, then I sanded it down, and hopefully you can see here that, the imperfections really kind of disappear. In woodworking and most things in life, there are several ways to accomplish the same thing. So order of operation can be anything from, building the cabinet first and then making a drawer that is exactly 1 inch smaller than the width of the opening space, or you can build the drawer box first and then build the space around it. And that's what I chose to do here because I wanted to optimize as much drawer width as I could and as much shelf width as I could. So I just am using a 1, 2, 3 block. So it's just a metal block that one dimension is exactly 1 inch. And then I put the drawer in. I have the whole cabinet flipped upside down right now so that I had a flat spot to put the drawer. And then this way I'm able to figure out exactly where I need to put those pieces of wood. These awesome soft close drawer slides come from Vendenia, and I'll put their website in the description. I really like these drawer slides, first of all, because they are black, so on the walnut you don't notice them as much, but I also just used 14-inch drawer slides in my nightstands from a different brand, and they take quite a bit of effort to get them started. And these pull out much easier, not as much of a catch, which I really appreciate, especially since I'm just using those little ovals as the handles. I set this to be flush with the front of the drawer and flush with the bottom of the drawer. And this is mostly because I wanted to be able to see those nice dowels, so that's why I went all the way to the bottom of the drawer. I'm using a Rockler drawer slide jig here, and this wasn't as helpful for getting the depth of the drawers as it usually would be, because basically both sides you're on very different surfaces because the legs protrude and then the bottom part protrudes more than the left side of the drawer for the one that I'm doing right now. So I just figured out where the back point was going to be for where the drawer slides would go in, and then I still was able to use the jig in order to hold it for me while I screw it in. I have another video on how to install inset drawer slides, but it's just a quick tip here. I said that the space needs to be 1 inch greater than your drawer box, but if you're going to be a little bit off, you're better off being a little bit over 1 inch instead of under 1 inch, because if you screw into these little spots that can pull away, then when you open and close the drawer a few times, those are going to bend a little bit and your drawer will open and close just fine. The soft close on these drawers is really smooth. So I'm going to use 16th inch spacers to go on the bottom and on the right side of the drawer. And normally if there's a handle, I like to screw into the handle holes to hold the front on while I then take the drawer out and screw it in from behind. But there's no handle in this case, so I'm just going to use some nice double stick tape, and that's going to hold it well enough until I'm able to pull the drawer out and then clamp it before I screw it in from the backside. So I'm pre-drilling and countersinking the spots for the screws, and then the big key is of course to have screws that are long enough to firmly hold the drawer front on without actually drilling or poking through the front of the drawer. And with this type of design, you also want to be very careful that you don't pick a spot within that oval. So that pretty much wraps up how these drawers were made. Please feel free to check out the video that I made on the tabletop itself, how I did a curved edge on that. And then I also did a separate video on installing the lift mechanism and a video that just kind of does an overview of the entire project. So please feel free to check those out. If you like my work, please like and subscribe, and I hope that you have an awesome time building something cool.